I feel like for most of my life, I've been fighting this force. This thing that stops me from doing what I want to do. This thing that makes me question every choice I make and makes me question myself constantly. Trying to fight this force has been hard because I never seem to find the source. And one day, it hit me that the thing, this force that stops me from trying all sorts of things and it stops me from growing and feeling good about myself is me. Someone that kind of popped in my brain as I was thinking about this and making this video was the big man, Iron Man himself. Everyone knows that Iron Man has a lot of problems. If there's one consistent thing with Tony Stark, it's that he is his own worst enemy. I really do enjoy the MCU's version of Iron Man and also the Extremist run, Demon in the Bottle. There's just so many storylines out there that I feel like really emphasize this point. But right now I really want to talk about what the MCU does because I feel like perfectly displays Tony's change and is constantly showing us that he is his own worst enemy. Starting off in the first movie, where he realizes that his own creations are killing people. And when he also gets hurt by his own bomb, he realizes that he doesn't want this for his life. He doesn't want to be known as this monster. He doesn't want his legacy to be that he created bombs and killed millions of people. So he decides to change his fate by creating the Iron Man suit and trying to atone for his sins. Then we go to the second movie, where once again he is reminded that he's mortal and that his time is limited and he's struggling with his own existence and his own life, realizing that his trauma of his past and the neglect he felt as a child was the thing that was kind of destroying him and eating him up and stopping him from being able to do more with who he is. Once realizing these issues, he's able to overcome his struggles, physically and also mentally, and correct the mistakes of his father. I think Iron Man 2 is definitely underrated. I know Whiplash isn't a loved character, but I think the growth in Tony is huge in this movie. Like I said, when he realizes that it's his own emotions and his own internal dialogue and demons that is kind of just stopping him from buckling down and figuring out the problem with his arc reactor and him creating the new element. Because he easily does it once he's able to go over this mental hurdle, but before he can even get to that, he has to just overcome these struggles in himself, and I think it's really awesome and really beautiful to the character, and I feel like it's really not talked about much. Not a lot of people like Iron Man 2, but personally, I do like it. Even if Whiplash is a bad character and like all that stuff. Avengers was just Tony allowing himself to be vulnerable and allowing himself to trust others and realizing that there is just so much things that are bigger than him and his pride and ego. And for me personally, I feel like the Avengers movie is a very huge point in Tony's character. I think this movie was the end of the old Tony Stark. I think from this point on, he is no longer that man who was selfish, but he becomes way bigger than that. By, him taking the bomb up into the portal and almost dying, it shows that he is no longer that person that he was in Iron Man 1, and from this point on, he was going to create a better future. Tony's struggles aren't just exclusive to the MCU. The character has constantly been having this identity crisis and trying to grapple with his choices, his mistakes, and his hurt. Tony is constantly trying to become a better person, becoming someone he is proud of. But the problem is, with growing, is that there's going to be growing pains. Although Tony Stark starts off as this money-oriented, selfish person, his willingness to grow is not accepted by the world around him, and most importantly, he doesn't really accept it himself. It feels like if you read any Iron Man, Tony is constantly having this inner dialogue and this inner battle with himself. He is always so critical of his choices and his actions, and oftentimes, he's never really left satisfied with who he is. He's a man who's constantly trying to do good, and he does do good, but he lets his own judgments never let him be happy. He can never really accept that he's changing or trying to change, and he never really allows himself to grow because he's constantly stuck on his own flaws, his own demons, and it doesn't let him go beyond the point of where he's at right now. I do enjoy the comics for one big thing that I think has a huge impact on the character of Iron Man, and that has to do with Tony Stark not being known as Iron Man. In the comics, Iron Man is more treated as this bodyguard for Tony Stark. And the reason I really do like this is because I think it shows Tony's heart for redemption way better. And it shows his true growth. He doesn't want the recognition of being Iron Man because that isn't the reason why he's doing it. He didn't create Iron Man to get more praise and attention. The reason he created Iron Man was he wanted to feel this redemption. He wanted to prove to himself that he was a good person and that his legacy was not going to be weapons. His legacy wasn't going to be him being a monster or a playboy who was selfish, but that to himself, he was much more than that. Iron Man's doing all this good stuff and the public sees Iron Man for being this cool person and like doing all this great stuff, but Tony Stark is seen as a jerk. Tony is constantly hated in the public, and I really do love this kind of dynamic because in a way it shows us Tony's idea of what he thinks he deserves. While he tries to redeem himself as Iron Man, he thinks that a way for him to be punished is for him to be hated by the public. And this is almost Tony's twisted way of the way he feels like he can be happy is by Tony Stark being hated by the world and seen as this monster hungry billionaire, while Iron Man is seen as this hero and gets all the praise. And I just think this dynamic is it's beautiful for self-growth. And also I think it just really shows Tony's self-hate for himself. Once again, he's not allowing himself to get any recognition for his changes. He wants to be punished, and I feel like the punishment is part of his redemption in his mind. For me, I figured it out that it was me. But once you figure out that yourself, that you are creating your own monsters, how do you change it? For so many years, I have been struggling with this, and it's a constant back and forth battle in my head, and it's all about learning to overcome yourself, and especially the same thing goes for Tony. The road to progress and change is difficult, especially with stories like The Demon in the Bottle, and there's just so many stories out there where it shows Tony struggles with his feelings and his self-hate and his identity crisis. It's easy when a villain is in front of you or there's a problem in front of you that's physical because you know how to take it. You know how to overcome it because it's a physical thing. But the hardest thing to do is to overcome these mental problems, these mental issues that you have with yourself. And it sucks when you're constantly hating on yourself and trying to prove to yourself that you are someone who deserves happiness. And I just really relate to that a whole bunch. Going back to the MCU, Iron Man, I think that Iron Man 3 is a perfect part in this trilogy. I think it really shows Tony's growth while also showing his struggles still. I mentioned that the old Tony died after sacrificing himself in Avengers and almost being reborn, but even after this, Tony is not done with his past. It comes back to bite him. In his moment of anger and his moment of desperation, Tony reverts back to this cocky, childish person by inviting the Mandarin to destroy his house. But he is taken out of that cockiness, that selfishness, once he sees Pepper almost get hurt and die. And throughout the movie, Tony is reminded of why he left that behind him, why he's changing. I think the little kid reminds Tony that he is no longer just this billionaire playboy, but he is also someone who little kids are looking up to. This whole movie is him reminding him of why he's doing it, why he's doing everything that he does. It's because of the loved ones around him, because the world is looking at him for change. And I think what Iron Man 3 does is it causes Tony to choose a new goal for his life. Because if Tony Stark died in Avengers, so did his old goals, his old dreams. So now after Avengers, Iron Man 3 shows us that Tony is choosing a new purpose, a new goal, which is displayed perfectly when he's willing to destroy his old obsessions, his old goals, which is his Iron Man suits, to show that he loves and cares for Pepper and that he's willing to move on from this point, and he's willing to move on and go towards the goal that he has now put in front of him. I feel like the biggest thing for me is to make goals for yourself. Hold on to your dreams and truly hold on to them tight. In the past, I have talked myself out of so much stuff. I've talked myself out of happiness, and I found myself in this place of stagnation, a place of mind-numbing complacence. I realized that nothing is more scary to me than living my whole life without trying to reach my goals and following my dreams. What scares me is not trying to improve myself and allowing myself to just sit here and be the person I am today. I want to grow. I want to let my past be behind me and not let it dictate my future. Of course, with change, you are bound to make a few mistakes. Tony creates Ultron and also sides with the government during the Sokovia Accords, which both of these mistakes were made from a place of fear, but also overcorrection on himself. It's not an immediate change. Working on yourself isn't a destination, but something we work on over time. The point is effort. The point is trying to make a difference. Tony is a human who makes mistakes. He screws up big time a lot, but at the end of the day, he is constantly trying to make the world a better place, trying to overcome his past and do what's right. To overcome yourself, to continue to pursue change even after failing so many times, that's something special. Now when you look at Iron Man as a character, you don't see Tony Stark from the first movie, this billionaire jerk who didn't care about anybody else. When you ask people who Tony Stark was and what he did, the biggest thing you'll see now is his sacrifice in Endgame. No one was thinking about who he was before. They just saw the man he was when he was sacrificing himself. And that's the most important thing to realize, is that you yourself, to overcome yourself and to get out of your own mind, you need to stop looking at your past. You need to stop letting it dictate what you do and who you are in your mind. Because guess what? It's the person you are today that truly matters. We have to continue to work on our goals and our dreams and not allow our mistakes of our past or ourselves to stop us from being the person we want to be. Iron Man is the perfect example of overcoming your past and making mistakes and constantly keep moving forward. It's hard to get past your own mental thoughts. It's hard to get past your own thoughts about yourself and your mistakes. But if you're able to do it, if you're able to overcome these things, you can truly change the world and affect the people around you in a positive way. It's hard, it's difficult, but you can do it. And that's what I really appreciate about Iron Man. Iron Man is one of the most flawed characters in the Marvel Universe. Superior Iron Man, you got so many things that he does that is messed up. But the point is he's trying to change. And you have to respect somebody who is trying to improve themselves, trying to change, and do what's right. I'm Canned Ideas. Hope you enjoyed this video. You can do it. You can change. Don't allow yourself to stop you. Talk to you later.